What's up guys, Clutch937 here, going to do a tutorial for a double traditional pocket. I'm using a CyberX and I'm going to do it a Colorado theme. So what you're going to need, obviously, 4 leathers, a decent amount of sidewall, I mean enough for a top string and sidewalls, and a nylon if you need it, some crosslace. For a double traditional I usually do 2 full arm lengths of each color, and then obviously shooting strings. So let's get to it. So I decided I'm going to do a replaceable top string on it, so I'll show you how I prepare my leathers. When you buy leathers, if you can, get them from a lacrosse store and examine them at first. You want to make sure that they don't stretch out when you do this too much, because then they're going to break if they stretch out way too much. But you definitely want them to stretch out a decent amount. So I already pre-stretched mine, and then obviously they got the 2 slits here, so you open one and go through this way, then you open the other. You go through just like that. So there's a rough side to it and a smooth side. You want the smooth side where the pocket is released. That's how I usually do all mine. I think that's how most people do them. I have seen a couple where it's inverted and they use the rough side for the actual pocket, but that's up to them. So basically do all 4 this way to where you have this loop, and don't focus on getting it too tight just yet until we put the top string in. Alright, so now I got all 4 taken care of. You can kind of see there. Going to the top string, so I usually use a sidewall, about an arm's length completely, and then just tie a knot on one end. Do that real quick. So I usually do like a little double knot like that, just keeps it tighter and make sure it doesn't come undone fast. And for this I usually go to the very top string. If you have a head like I do with multiple string holes, it makes it a lot easier, so just pull it through. Take your first leather, make sure that the smooth side is going where the pocket is, and to start it off, you go from the back of the head through this way, so as you can see. Then you get your leather, put it through, and go the opposite way, same way you do a normal top string for a mesh stringing. So there. So you have it like that. There's the front of it. Continue doing this for all 4. I'll do one more real quick. So there you have it, and like I said, don't worry about these loops being loose because we will tighten them once we get it all taken care of. Alright, so as you can see, got the whole top string done. I still have the leathers loose, I'll tighten them at the end. But basically you just want to make sure that this top part is fairly tight. You don't want it too loose because then your leathers are going to start sinking and dragging and making it too loose. So we'll do the sidewalls. When I do them I do the same thing, a full arm's length, and tie a knot one end, and I'll show you how I do them. So just a basic double knot. If you have a head like I do with multiple string holes, I like to start at the second hole, and then since we're doing a double traditional, which uses a lot of, I guess, spacing, it's kind of hard to determine where the actual interlocks are going to go on the sidewall. I like to skip about every 3 holes or every 2 holes, and I skip the top hole because you want to end your strings on both sides at the top to make it look better. So first one I skip 3, then I skip 2, skip 2, we'll skip 2, and for the bottom one, I'm just going to go through and do this hole actually, since they are a bit wider holes, because when you do these you use both the bottom and the top sidewall hole to put your crosslace through. So that's how I do them, just your basic outside knot. I like skipping all these holes just because it gives you more sidewall to work with and more spacing. So it's not really a waste because we're going to use just about every single one of these. Before I tie off a double knot, I like to do one single knot, and then once I get the crosslace in, which I'll show you momentarily, then I do my double knot to make sure it fits. Alright, so now I got both my sidewalls in place, as you can see. We're going to do the leather part. The one thing I do is, since I keep them loose up here, I like to pull them fairly tight. You don't want them too tight because eventually you're going to be feeding a string through the top part, so just a little bit of space but not too much. And then do that with each one. And then the tricky part after you do this is the leather spacing and the pocket depth. Obviously when you're stringing a leather pocket or any type of traditional, the leathers and the pocket itself will stretch over time, so you don't want to make it a barely legal pocket. You want to give it some room to break in. And then when I do my leathers, I like to go up through the back of the head, as you can see here. So I pull each and every single one pretty tight, and then I find my spacing out after I do that. So. Alright, so as you can see, I have them relatively tight. I do this just to get it one final stretch out where the pocket is. So I take the bottom one, pull it up, pull it down, pull it up, pull it down. I do that for every single one, and then I let it sit for a couple seconds just to make sure it stretches out a decent amount. And afterwards, push the leathers right here back up towards the front of the head, like this. Makes it easier to loosen up the pocket. So we're going to start with the two middle ones. I'm going to loosen them out a bit. I'm going to go for, I guess, more of a mid to mid-high pocket on this. So obviously that's a bit too deep. So tighten it up, do that. Got a ball here just to kind of check. So I mean, as you can see, still a bit of room to stretch in a little bit, but we'll see how it goes. So do that. Make sure each one is relatively the same looseness, and then if it's not, obviously you tighten it just a little bit. So once you get it there, take your leathers, go back through how you normally had them. For the middle ones, I like to do them on the outside of it, so right here. And then tie, I guess, just one single knot along the front of the head to kind of make sure your leathers don't stretch out too much while you're actually stringing the pocket itself. So just like that. Do the same thing for the outer ones. You don't want them to be as loose as the middle ones, but still loose enough to where it's not going to hold your pocket too much. So you can see, make sure they're about the same distance, and then tie a knot. So let's do that real fast. There's how I start my leathers, just basic knots, nothing too fancy, because eventually you're going to have to untie them and loosen the pocket, but pocket itself's looking pretty nice. I mean, obviously there's no string in it yet, but I like the depth and I like how much it's going to stretch. And for the outer ones, they are relatively tight to get a bit more hold. So now we'll do the cross lace. Alright, so for the cross lace, like I said before, I like to do 2 full arm lengths. Depending on how long your arm span is, you might want a little more, a little less. So afterwards I do this, I find a tip that is, I guess, a bit smaller, a bit harder, and just kind of light it up a little bit, kind of get a little black and get a little tougher. So you can see there, it's a bit more singed, we'll go with. This just makes it easier to get through all the holes and whatnot. And the other one, just make sure it's a little bit burnt on the side. Tie your double knot and we'll get started. Alright, so obviously you want to take your tip with the more singed tip, and for these I like to start on the very bottom hole right here. Like I said earlier, don't tie a double knot because you got to try and fit that through. If it's too small of a hole, I suggest putting your sidewall knot one up and then put the cross lace to the very bottom one. So if you want to do a 6 diamond double traditional, the way I like to do mine, obviously you're going to need 3 diamonds on each leather, and then eventually cross over with the blue one. So we're going to set this one up a little higher. So we'll do that. So as you can see, I went from the bottom up through the back of the leather, up through this part, and then there's different tricks you can do to make sure that the cross lace itself goes through a side a little bit easier. So I like to hold my string like this and pull it through. It just saves, like half a second, which really isn't that big of a deal. So just your basic sidewall attachment, back of the sidewall up through. So I'll show you how I attach it to the leather one more time. So take this, go through the back side of the leather, up through, and make a diamond. So there's that. Pull it through. Then we'll go through sidewall again. Do one more right about there. Back through. right here. So as you can see, I have 3 diamonds. You got 1, 2, 3, and the blue ones go the opposite direction, so it's going to end about here. And to end it off, or to go and start your next part, there it is. Going to go through this top sidewall loop right here, push it through, bring it up once we get it there. We get that. So once you get to this part where you bring it through this part, or through this sidewall string, you want to make sure that's not too tight, not too loose, because your outer leathers are kind of where you get some more of the hold for the pocket. So I like the way that is right now. And this part is a little tricky part. Everyone has a different way of doing it. I like to go through this little spacing in the leather. Just kind of makes it look a bit cleaner in my opinion, but everyone has their own way of doing it. So once you get to this part, what you're going to do is you're going to go across the diamond, or kind of mix and match it. So as you can see, one trick I really learned that helped me a lot is this little loop right here is where you want to put this string on the second leather and match it up. That way it's pretty symmetrical and whatnot. So we'll do that real quick. So like I said, through the back of the leather, actually, we're going to go up to the top part first. I lied. So like I said, match this loop right here with your next interlock on the leather. Come back through, and as you can see right here, there's kind of a little loop right here. So that's where you want to go through the back of the leather, like this, and make the loop. And basically what that's going to do is going to lock it in place that way. Obviously there's 2 different ways you can go through the front of the leather or the back of the leather. I know Connor Wilson likes to go through the front with most of his pockets. I've been going through the back ever since I started stringing them, so I'm going to stick to it that way just because that's what I'm used to. So as you do this, make sure you check these middle leathers. Make sure they're roughly where you want them and pretty much straight from the top holes to the bottom holes. Eventually, or I guess sometimes, it makes it easy to string this part way too tight here and way too tight here, and you have this huge bag. But at the same time, that's also another way to get more hole in your pocket if you really want that. So like I said before, just match the interlocks and you'll be good to go. Alright, so I did these ones. I'm going to show you how I end my interlocks. As you can see, these are fairly loose. I like to keep them that way just because it kind of helps with stretching the pocket out and getting a little deeper. And towards the end, or after we string the whole cross lace, we're going to go back through and tighten everything up. So what I like to do when I end them is I like to go a bit lower in the leather as opposed to, you know, evenly spacing it. I go a little lower. I did the same thing you normally would to lock it off, which is back through the back side of the leather and then up and around. So you get your normal interlock kind of diamond right here. And then what I like to do is get the tip of your sidewall string again, or your cross lace, and bring it up through, creating a knot. So before I tighten it all the way, I'll kind of show you what it's going to look like. So looks like that. You pull it, and don't tie it too tight just yet because, like I said, we have to go back through and adjust it. But basically just tight enough to where you can move it around, but it's still going to hold its place while you string the rest of the cross lace. So that's just how I like to end mine. I know a lot of people like to cut their leathers, and I'm not a big fan of that, just in case they rip and you're kind of out of a pocket that you spend a lot of time working and breaking in. So now we'll just kind of go back through. Like I said, try and match the diamond one leather over or one sidewall over. So you go back through, up like that, and continue it, making sure that both these are relatively straight to where the top hole and the bottom hole are, and continue all the way going through. Alright, so after you get done with the third side of the leather, as you can see, like I said before, these are relatively loose. I mean, they're actually really loose, and it's not going to make for a consistent pocket, but I like to kind of pound my pocket, see where it's going to end up. Obviously, you can put it wherever you want, but where you specifically want the pocket is where you're going to want to kind of pound and watch that part. So you go through the leather again and continue going acrossward, and then we'll start the blue cross lace. Alright, so as you can see, we got the knot down here, and like I've been saying previously, when you're going to attach it to the final sidewall string and the final leather, make sure you get across from this diamond. It just matches up evenly. So I'll show you one of them. So you go back through the sidewall and up again, making sure you get that loop. And as you can see, The spacing right here is relatively the same. They're pretty much straight across. And just continue your pocket. Don't worry about using too much of the sidewall strings. And one thing I definitely recommend is stringing them looser, especially all the interlocks, because once we get there, we're going to actually break it in. But as you can see, it's really loose. There's hardly any pocket in it that's going to actually be functionable, but we'll adjust that at the end. So continue going up, and I'll show you how to tie it off. Alright, so once you get to this part where you're about to end it off, I like to take the cross lace and go through the very top hole where we did the top string. So let me get that in there. Pull it. You want it relatively tight, and then I just tie a single knot, like I said before, to kind of make sure that it is easy to undo once we go to the adjusting period. So you get it there. That's how your pocket's going to look. Or at least that's how it looks as of right now. So we got a 4-diamond traditional going on, but we're going to make it into an 8-diamond. I said 6, but it's going to turn out to be an 8-diamond. So once I get here, I like to cut a decent amount of the string off so it's not in my way. But make sure you still have enough to where you can adjust it properly and easily. So burn that, and then next we'll get started with the blue cross lace. Alright, so just like we did with the red cross lace, you're going to tie a double knot, put it through the very bottom sidewall hole, and singe the tip a bit, as you can see, so it's I guess makes it easier to go through all the loops and the holes. So the second cross lace and the second color is probably my favorite part to do, just because you get the main pocket formed already, and it makes it a lot easier because you just follow the loops. So basically, as you can see, since this leather, there's no loop here, but there's 2 loops here, this is where you're going to start your blue one. So, or I guess your second color if you're not using blue. So you just go through the back like you did before, do the same deal. Get that locked on there, as you can see right there, and then do the same thing, you know. Bring it up through the sidewall hole, matching the opposite cross lace right here, and then going back up in between the two. So keep doing that, and then I'll show you once you get to the top. Alright, so once you get to this part, just like we did the last one, go through the top sidewall hole loop, outside to inside. That's how I like to do them. You can do inside, outside, your choice. And then once you get here, push it through the top of the leather. Depending on how tight you do them, it could be a hassle, but luckily that one went through relatively easily. So pull this tight. Make sure you don't get that string stuck in there. And there you have it. So when I do these, I like to try and make sure that the red and the blue one are relatively the same looseness. As you can see, you can kind of start seeing the X part start forming. Some people call it double traditional and X traditional. It's really up to you. But basically make sure it's somewhat loose to where you can go through and adjust easily, but don't make it too loose to where your pocket's just going to start being absolutely crap. So, like I said before, we're going to follow this diamond and go exactly across from it. One thing I also like to do is I don't like to do my leather loops, or I guess my cross lace loops, over these parts. I like to let them flap. I just find it looks a bit cleaner if you do it that way, but it's really up to you. So, like I said, back of the leather, back through just like a normal sidewall loop or a normal traditional loop. There you have it. Then you start locking through the blue one. So as you can see, it has a little hole right here. Go back through it and through the front. Pull it. And then one thing is, if your crosslace starts doing this and starts getting bunched, don't try and force it through. Just kind of pull it back out and then put it back in nice and softly. So there you have it. Continue doing that all the way down. I'll do one more just to kind of show you guys, and then show you how I tie it off. So, like I said, back to the leather, through the front of the leather, making sure it's even with the cross red lock. And there you have it. So continue doing this until you get to the bottom. I'll show you how I tie them off. Alright, so as you can see, I did the first 2 sides. Now we're getting to tying it off. Basically, same thing as before. Try to match these 2 knots as best as you can, going on this leather and this leather once we get to this one. Back side of the leather just like you normally would. Fix it to where you want it, and then once you get there, you just take it right back up through this hole. Pull it to where it's almost a complete knot. So you get this, adjust it a bit, make sure it's a little loose, and then tie it off. So you get to there, pound the pocket a bit. As you can see, it's slowly taking shape and form, and then start up doing the next side. So like I've been saying the whole video, make sure that these 2 locks and the blue lock, or I guess the second color lock, match up going straight across, and then tighten it up just a bit, but not too tight because we are going to go back through and adjust it, and if they're looser, it'll make it a bit easier to go through and adjust it. So get to that, do the next one, and one thing you got to watch out once you get to the middle track or the middle part of the leathers is making sure that they don't bunch too close together, they're not too tight on one side and too loose on the other. So after I do every interlock or every other interlock, I like to go back through, pound the pocket a little bit to make sure it's relatively straight and going where I want it to. But as you can see in the middle, the cross part, or I guess the X part, is slowly coming and taking shape, so we're doing a good job. Alright, so now we're about to tie off the final knot for the final leather. So like we've been doing the other 3 times, back through like a normal loop, try and match it up, back up, get it a little tight, pull it, get it right where you want it, and tie it off just a little tight. So then, same thing on the sidewalls, try and match it up. So blue here, and go up through the head, and we'll finish it up. Alright, so we got the last interlock here, and just like we had the red cross lace, we're going to go up through the top string hole, get it relatively tight right there, and go through, tie just a single knot, and then cut off some of the excess string we don't need. So at this point, we have a decent pocket, but as you can see, it's a little goofy looking. So I'm going to go back through and readjust it. At this point, you can take your sidewall string, if you haven't already, and do your double knot since we have the cross lace through, and we no longer need to worry about untying the bottom part. So just like that, go back through the other side, and do the same thing. There we have it. Alright, so now for adjusting it, what I like to do is put the ball in the butter knife trick. I like to put the ball where I relatively want the pocket. Obviously, you can use, a ball or a tennis ball and chopsticks, lacrosse ball chopsticks, whatever you feel is comfortable with. I just happen to have a butter knife and a lacrosse ball in my room, so that's what we're going to do. So to start going through, I like to start with the first string I did, which was the red string, and just start pulling it like this, and eventually you'll start seeing some slack, and yeah, I'll show you once we get to the bottom part. But as you go through and adjust this, make sure your leathers aren't pulling. You don't want them separating, going too far away from each other. You also don't want to do it too tight because we're going to pound the pocket and try and make it deeper. So just enough to where it's not too loose and it's not going to start shifting around all the interlocks. So if you do use a brand new lacrosse ball, it is very grippy, so you kind of have to be careful with this. You don't want to pull it too tight, so you just kind of work with it and make sure it goes through. So we'll do that, and once you get to the knot, that's probably the toughest part because you don't want your knot being too loose or too tight. So once you get the first side done the way you want it, loosen the knot obviously, pull it down where you want it, and then pull it as tight as you can. Once you get to this part, you just don't want it moving, so I like to do that and pull it relatively tight. You're not going to snap your leather, but as you can see, just from the first 2 sides, this is how much slack we got out of it. So do that all the way through, and then we'll show you how to tie it off. Alright, so as you can see, after adjusting the whole red string, we got probably about 2 or 3 inches of slack, which is always nice. So what I do with this is obviously untie the knot there. I was about to bite it. So untie it and then do the same thing. At this point, you can tie a double knot and cut off the excess string. So 1 knot, and then I just go back through, do a double knot. So when you tie off the knot for the top part, you want to make sure that this string is relatively tight, but not too tight to where you can see it pulling the leather. You don't want that at all. So relatively tight to where it's straight, and then I like to cut off a decent amount of it, but still enough to where I can untie the knot and adjust it if I have to go back through at some point later on in time. So you got the red string done, now it's time to do the blue string. So same thing, I usually like to start here because I usually do my sidewall super tight. So start here and start bringing it through. Shouldn't have to adjust the second string as much as the red. It should be relatively tight, but like I said, just kind of pull through, make sure the leathers are staying straight. You don't want them going too far or too low. And then once you get to the knot, obviously untie it. And at this point, since this knot came up a little higher, I'm just going to pull it down some more to where it matches up with the red ones. Once I get it there, pull this string. And there you have it. Get super tight. So obviously most of the slack from the second part right here for the blue string went into the knot and making sure it's lowered and making sure it's symmetrical with all the red ones, so makes it super nice and easy. Then you just kind of go back through the middle and show you how to tie it off again. Alright, so just like we did the red string, pull that. As you can see, we didn't get as much slack from the blue one just because most of the actual string slack came down for this knot to make sure it came down. And then just untie the knot and then tie it again with a double knot and call it good. Like I said with the red one, when you're doing this, pull it relatively tight but not too tight to where your leather comes all the way across the side. Obviously you don't want that at all, but do that, and there we go. So cut it off, burn it, just give it enough slack in case you have to go back through and readjust it later on in life. And there you have it. So now we'll do the shooters and then show you the rest of the steps I do. Alright, so I have to go through and actually tighten the strings and make sure it's not too loose. I like to go back through before I do the shooting strings and make sure all of the interlocks are going straight across. You don't want them too lopsided. If I can find one, I'll show you guys, but relatively looks pretty good. Right here you can see how these two don't really match with those two, so I'm just going to pull this one up a little bit. And there you have it. See how those two match now? So go through the whole stake and make sure it's that way. One thing you definitely need to be careful with a double traditional, depending on how you tie it off at the bottom, is you don't want this gap way too large to where a ball could fit through it. I don't think we'll have a problem, but you never know. So maybe what I should have done is put these down a bit lower, but I think it'll work for now. So make sure all your diamonds are relatively the same. Make sure the knots are super tight, and we'll go from there for the shooting strings. Alright, so for the shooting strings, I'm going to do one nylon and one straight. The nice thing about double traditionals is since they have all the same, I guess, interlocks on the leathers going across, they're not like a normal traditional where one's here and one's here. You can pretty much match it to where it goes straight across and doesn't interfere with the actual interlock. So I just go through a sidewall hole and just kind of weave it through how you normally would with a mesh stick. You know, in, out, just like that. And then one thing for these is you got to be sure that you're going through the exact same holes. So as you can see here, how I went through, or I guess I went over this lock, but then went through the middle of this one, through the middle of this one. So I got to go back through and fix that up a bit, but otherwise it should be relatively easy. Just get that, get it going across, move it up as high as you want it. I actually might put that, no, that's fine. I like a little lip in this. So you just take it and go back through, making sure you cross over normally how you would for like a mesh stick. I usually do the up and over trick. One trick I guess you could do is taking and just weaving it through with both sides of the string. It will kind of save time, but I like to go one side of the string at a time. So continue doing that until you get about there. Make sure it looks even. Make sure it's relatively tight depending on how you want it, and then tie it off. So there you go. There's many different ways to do a nylon. If you watch Spawn Pipo's video at all, I'll post a link to it down below. He likes to do two straight across and then weave it through, or I guess barrel it through. Not sure what it's called on traditional stick or really a mesh stick, but to each their own. I like to do this for most of my traditionals, but I've used that way before. So for the shooting string, I'll show you how you can do a double weave or you just do a single weave. Or I guess that's what I call it. So for a double weave, obviously you put it through a sidewall hole. Make sure it's relatively the same length and just kind of go at it this way. So I like doing this way sometimes, but when you get to the adjusting period and making sure it's flat, sometimes it can be a hassle. So just keep on going straight across. And we'll do this. So you get it there, and then before I tie the knot, I like to go through and pull it, make sure it's relatively tight and looks relatively flat so it's not too much of a hassle. So you can see there's the front of it, and then you tie it off. And lastly, I'll show you the way I personally like to do my shooting strings. I like to go just like I did with the nylon, one side first, weave it through. I guess there's really no benefit either way, it's just kind of what you like to do. Some people say if you go the first one, it's a bit faster, but I don't know, to each their own. So you do this. Make sure it goes through the same sidewall loop as you did before. Being a double traditional, making sure that the sidewalls are symmetrical makes it pretty easy to do. So you do that. Then you come back through, up and over technique, making sure that no leathers or actual interlocks are exposed. You want to make sure they're covered up so your shooting string is effective. So get there. Get there. Pull it, make sure that they're flat and they're not too loose. And you tie it off. So, I'm liking the way it looks. 1 nylon and 2 straight, so it's college legal and high school legal for next year. Basic mid to mid-high-ish pocket, but we're going to tie these off. I'm going to show you how to break it in a little bit. Alright, so at this point, I took the ball and the knife out, obviously. Take it out carefully, making sure you don't cut any of the crosslace or sidewall strings. And I like to use a homemade ball pounder or ball pocket pounder, what do you want to call it, and just kind of work the pocket where I want it. This kind of helps stretch out the crosslace and leathers a bit more. So I do that for about a good minute or two. Get the whole pocket as best you can, but focus more or less on where you want the actual pocket to be. And as you can see, it's relatively taking shape where we want it to. So do that and do it for a little longer. Alright, so I have to use the ball, or I guess the pocket pounder, or whatever you want to use to pound the pocket itself. I like to get the whole pocket wet, just warm water, not too much. You don't want to like soak it, but I guess just kind of drizzle it on, and then do the ball and butter knife trick or ball and chopstick trick, whichever you want to do. And once you get to this point, I like to make sure that the whole leather gets wet, especially the end parts. Once you get here, I like to untie them, pull them a bit tighter so they don't stretch out way too much, and keeps your pocket nice and tight. Look at the front, make sure that both leathers are the same. As you can kind of see, this outer leather is a bit looser than this one, so I'll go back through and tighten it just a bit more. There we go. So they're relatively the same. So after you get that, you tie them to the front or the back of the head, whichever you prefer. I like to go through the front of the head. So I do the top one first, then the second one or the bottom one. So you can see, you get your first knot, then you go back through and do a square knot. I don't really know how to explain it or what it does for you, but supposedly keeps it tighter. So you get that done. So there you have it. Obviously this is super long. We'll fix that later. I'll probably cut them once I'm done with it or once it dries overnight. One thing I highly recommend is going back through one more time and making sure all your knots are across and all your knots are as low as you want them to be. Just because once it's wet, the leathers and crosslace start to break in and form to each other. So there it is, nice mid to mid-high pocket. And hope you guys enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun making it. Leave me, I guess, a comment down below. Let me know if you want to see more tutorials. Give me all your feedback for this, really, please. Good or bad feedback. I just kind of need to know what to do to make these videos better. Obviously, better lighting. It's like 9:30 at night, so I don't have anything there, and I have a decent lamp. But I'll probably get something better eventually. So that's how I stream my double traditionals. Hope you guys enjoy. This set is for sale on 50calmesh.bigcartel.com. I'll post a link to that down below, obviously. And the Black Friday sale, I guess, or the whole weekend sale is going pretty well. I've had 15, I think, orders so far for mesh. No one's bought the pre-strung heads yet, but like I said before, all orders are eligible to receive the Dragonfly C30 limited edition black and red shaft. All you have to do is place an order between now and Tuesday morning. So, hope you guys enjoy. Like I said, let me know down below in the comments how you feel about it, and give me all your feedback.